This is an interview with Mrs. Grace Parker, Arneys Mount Road, Pemberton, on March 10th, 1976. Unfortunately, the tape wasn't recording properly in the beginning, so there'll be a few minutes before you'll hear Mrs. Parker's voice. She'll be talking about the school in Pointville. She had moved out with her family from Philadelphia, was in the 6th grade in school, and was for the first time going to a one-room schoolhouse. She'll be talking about her experience there.
A little room out there. You had double desks. You sat together, and it was quite difficult when you came out of a school in Philadelphia with 1,000 or more children to a little one-room school with a teacher with recitations going on. It was difficult for me to concentrate. I just didn't do too well. And I went there in March 1916. And of course, I didn't get promoted in June. And so then I started back the next year to go again with the 6th grade. And then in 1917, wait a minute, we moved, how does that go? 16. I started back in the fall of 16. But I really didn't like it. And I used to go, I'd start out for school, and I'd walk over to my aunt and stay with my aunt. And my mother would wonder why I didn't come home, and then she'd come hunting for me.
You didn't go to school that day?
No, I'd stay off because I just didn't like it. Mm-hmm. I just didn't like it.
What was the teacher's name? Do you remember?
Stevenson. You know, Mary Stevenson. Mary lives down here in Pemberton. Mary Yerkes. She was the teacher, right? But it was so different, and the boys were, I just didn't like them. I was sort of a quiet sort of person. I never have been too friendly. I'm more friendly now than I used to be. But it was just so different, and I just didn't care for it, and I'd stay away. Pardon?
How old were you?
I was 11. Mm-hmm. And so I finally, my mother talked to me about it, and I kept on going to school. And then in 1917, in the fall of 1917, we moved into Mount Holly. So I started the 6th grade over again. And that was bad, and I continued in the Mount Holly area, in Mount Holly School, until 1920. And of course,
now your parents had lived in Philadelphia before they came to Pointville.
Right,
your father had been a policeman,
right?
And his name was
Yerkes, Christian Reinhart Yerkes.
And what was your mother's maiden name?
Kezzie Jackson. Mm-hmm. And they had, of course, my father's relatives lived over near Brown's Mills, Kinsley's, and that was his.
How were they related?
That was my sister, the sister.
Your father's sister?
Yeah, right. That was his sister, and her name was Philippina Yerkes Kinsley. She had 7 boys and 2 girls. They had a beautiful farm, a dairy farm, and chickens, ducks.
Where was that located?
Part way from, now let's see, how would I say that? When you would leave Pointville, you would go out to the road, it was called the Lemontown Road, and
which is now Pointville Road from Pemberton.
Yeah, what they call Pointville Road. And you would make a turn, you can still make that turn, it's still the same road, only of course it's in the Fort Dix area, you know. Mm-hmm. And as you went out that road toward Brown's Mills, they lived about halfway from that point where you would make a turn. They lived about halfway down that way with a beautiful farm. Of course, there were farms all around, you know. I don't know how many, there must have been 30 or more farms.
That wouldn't be the Lewistown Road.
Well, there is, yes, that would be. Mm-hmm. Browns Mills, Lewistown Road. Mm-hmm. That comes right out there where these housing developments are, you know. Yeah.
And the school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've kind of drawn a map here for me of Pointville area, as you remember it. I don't wonder that they called it Pointville, because according to this, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different directions you could come from.
Right, you could.
All met there.
Yeah.
That would be the Wrightstown Browns Mills Road, and I believe that's called Texas Avenue now, over at McGuire. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Scrabbletown Road.
Yeah, they used to call that Scrabbletown. That
which
was the
is
road.
now Range Road.
The later was the Rifle Range Road.
Range
yeah.
Road. And then there's Cattown Road.
Yeah, that's what they called it.
And that's the road
The schoolhouse was on that road.
How far out would that be from the center of Pointville?
From the center of town, it could be about a half a mile. And that was also past John Henry Atkinson's house. They had a big farm. And as you went down there, to go to the school, you went past their driveway and their home that was there. They had a beautiful farm there.
How many boys and girls do you think went to this little school?
I would say, at the time that I went, there must have been 30 or 35. I'm not really sure. I wish I had that picture. I should have looked for that for you. I have a picture of Mrs. Fort, but that's later. At this particular time, when Miss Stevenson had it, I really would, I don't have any.
Mm-hmm. Now you say the cemetery is on the Browns Mills Wrightstown Road.
Yeah, right.
Cemetery and church.
Uh-huh.
That would be north of the center of Pointville. And there was a parsonage alongside the church.
Right.
And this was a Methodist church.
Right.
You've given us the history here.
Methodist Episcopal, it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also a building there that they used for a hall, like a guest hall. That was very small at the beginning, but then during the First World War, they enlarged that. They made it a great big place that they could have for the guests, for the mothers and fathers of the young men at Fort Dix, and for others. They used that, for entertainment and also for giving them a place to sleep if they could find no other place. Mm-hmm. And that was a very popular place. The church used to have great big suppers there, chicken suppers and oyster suppers. But back when we first came, it was just a small affair, and there was no ice cream store. Like, they used to make their own ice cream. They'd have ice cream festivals, strawberry festivals, peach festivals, all that sort of thing. It was really beautiful. It was a tiny little place. There was a lot of gossip and a lot of miserable stuff like that around the place, But for people coming out of the city, it was really a novelty to us. We sort of looked at it with the. It was just something new, something different. The people there in the town would speak to you as you walked by. You would be spoken to good morning or good afternoon, not like it is now.
How many houses would you guess there were at that time?
Oh my. There were so many. Let's see. There must have been 50. I would think there were 50. I think
That's
so.
surprising.
Because right outside the town, there would be a little cluster. And then farther down near the schoolhouse, there was another farm. Then down the other road, there were several. As you went on down, there were farms here and there, and houses and houses for that didn't have much land. It'd be just a small piece of land, probably, with it.
And then during World War II,
Fort
Fort Dix took over all this and demolished the houses.
Yeah. Of course,
and
a lot
moved
of
the church.
Yeah. Right.
This newspaper clipping says the church was destroyed, but you say we don't actually know that.
Well, I don't know it. I had the impression that it was moved to a shore area, but I'm not sure of that. But I know it had those beautiful stained glass windows, and the people who did that, they worked very hard and long to make it. The building was really beautiful. It was a small place, small building, but it was beautifully kept. The people that did it, they had a fine spirit in the Ladies' Aid, Missionary Society. They did a lot of good, I would say. They really did. And it was all new for me. I joined in. I helped. I used to help in the Sunday school, and I taught in the Sunday school afterward. And after the First World War, and we moved back. After I was married, I had Sunday school class, and I played the piano and taught. Aunt Ida was the superintendent. Then when she got to the point where she really couldn't, I was the superintendent at the Sunday school and used to help in various things there. It was a beautiful experience as I think about it,
You have a nice picture here of the general store. I wanted to ask you what you remembered about that.
Well, that picture right there is during the, that was after the First World War. When we first moved there, people by the name of Lewis had the store. That was a general store. It doesn't look quite like that. It didn't have those plate glass windows. I think it was more on an old-fashioned type of store. Maybe a front window it had. And then there they had a great big stove, and the men would sit around there, entertaining each other with talking of various things, you know. And I'd go down there, and they just had everything in there. They had dry goods of all kinds. They had all sorts of which is like dry groceries, you know, any kind of thing, candy and things for the farm, all types of.
It looks like quite a large.
It was a large store. It really was. It was quite a large. Well, that was. I think that was built on afterward. I really do. I do think so. But Lewis was the name, and I don't know the first name of them. I really don't know.
Do you mind if I write on the back of that?
No, you may. You certainly may.
Lewis's General Store?
But that isn't the one. That was the Schlams. The one.
Oh.
See that store there, that Jewish people had it later.
And how do you spell that?
Schlam, S-C-H-L-A-M. They had that store.
And what year approximately would you say this was taken?
That was taken, I would say, let me see now, I have to think. It's hard to say. I take a notion to walk around and take pictures, you know, and of course I heard that they were going to do something with the place. It probably was in maybe about 37 or 38, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. Because I had a group of young people, and we used to go in this old hotel that was there. That was a very, very old place. They had that for years. I wish I could tell you who had it.
This is right on the corner in
Yes,
Pointville.
it was. And I know the name would be familiar probably to you too, if I could just think of it. But it had many, many rooms with little stairways up and down.
The hotel?
Mm-hmm. It was really a beautiful place. I'd love to get in there and see it. The furnishings and all the rooms were old. Some of them were really beautiful, you know. Old-fashioned things.
Who would stay at a hotel? It always interests me that these little country towns would have hotels.
Well, they did.
Like Juliustown had
yes,
at least
they did.
2, and I was told that they had 4 even at Juliustown.
And in Browns Mills, they only had, I think, 1 in Browns Mills. Jackson had that. I think it was.
Well, they had several boarding houses.
Yeah,
there.
they did have those. Yes, that you have a history of that over in the Beck's books. You know, that tells you quite a bit. Of course, when I saw Browns Mills for the first time, it was really beautiful. Nothing to compare to what it looks like now.
Oh.
Those beautiful lakes and those and the buildings that they had there that were those boarding homes, and those it was just a lake that was it was pure and fresh and clean and just lovely. Mm-hmm. And of course the people that Hensley's, our relatives, they had an old Studebaker, you know, the kind of a car that had the rubber horn, you know, back in those days with the brass on it, you know, and they used to take us a ride out in the country sometimes. And we went through Browns Mills, and of course there weren't any of those houses, no bungalows, very few homes in there then at that time. I think Dr. Newcomb. I think Dr. Newcomb had a hospital there at that time for tuberculosis.
I didn't realize until the other day that Sycamore Hall had been a tuberculosis hospital.
Yes,
too.
it was. And Sycamore Hall was owned by my cousin, Carolyn Stahl, who used to be, wait, I have to think of, isn't that awful? That's terrible to think I can't remember that name now.
Her husband?
Carol, no. I knew her mother. Her mother and father were my mother and father's relatives. Not awful. I can't think of her. I should have remembered that. Wenzel. It was Carolyn Wenzel and Etta, and her Mr. and Mrs. Wenzel. They had a store in Frankfort Avenue in Philadelphia. Then they moved out into Browns Mills. They had a nice home there. Just before you got to Sycamore Hall. And later, of course, then when Carolyn married, then they had that. They ran it as a hospital. And then later on, of course, and he passed on. Walter Stahl.
We're kind of getting away from the
no
Pointville
doubt.
here, aren't we?
Well,
this house that you lived in Pointville had an interesting experience there. it became a sort of recreation place
Yes,
for
well,
soldiers,
right.
Taken over by the Episcopal Church, and your
Right.
parents leased it
Yeah, right.
to the Episcopal Church.
Yeah. They came around looking for some place that they could have a recreation place for the men and also have a chapel. And so they liked the looks of our house. It was fairly large and roomy, and they knew they could enlarge it and make it better. And the chaplain Block came, and his wife, and they built on it and made it. It really only had 8 rooms, but they were enormous rooms. They were the living room and dining room area, and the bedrooms were all made in the 2 bathrooms, and put electric lighting in there and a steam heating plant, and they had everything very beautifully done.
And this became known as the Eastgate Club?
No, that was much later.
That was later.
Don't associate it with this particular thing. The Eastgate Club, it was much later. That was after 1940.
In World War II.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
This
But it was
they
in
had
World War I when the Episcopal Church.
And the Episcopal Church had it down, and they put their buildings, their clubhouse, down right on our property, and they also had their little chapel down there, and then also on the same property, they had the other the church that I can't think of that again.
The
now.
Lutheran Church.
The Lutheran, yeah, the Lutheran church. People came in and they had it, and then right next to them was the Methodist group. They had, and really there wasn't enough. There really wasn't enough places for all the young men to go. They were overrun with men all the time. They were always going there. They would be entertained. They'd have groups come in from outside, and it was really
like a USO club in World War II.
It was really
Sounds
beautiful.
like,
Yeah, but you see, then a lot of that after the First World War, a lot of that all died down, and they all moved away, and only the Methodist Church was still open for Fort Dix, and there were still some men there. And then later on, when they began some activity over there, and they began to rebuild it, getting ready. Of course, I guess they were getting ready for World War II. There were still quite a few men, and in this brochure that I gave you here, you'll see, and also in that other article, newspaper article, how they came there and how grateful they were, and some of the very beautiful things that were done.
You can see here how the house was remodeled, can't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The same 2 windows on
Yes.
the second floor.
Right.
And then
They just extended it. See, they made this much, much larger.
Yes, out this way.
They came away out there. And let's see, they built out on the other area there. This room was left like it is, but the dining area, the room came out farther. And it was, it was really, they really did a very nice job, Of course, inside it wasn't done as nicely as it wasn't plastered. They used plasterboard, which we had to replace when we came back.
Yeah, you have another picture here of the sawmill in Pointville.
Oh, yes.
Asher Parker's, and you say it's no relation
No.
to your husband,
no.
as far as you know.
As far as I know, it's no relation. But that was active when we first came there to live. That was in 1916. That was very active. Beside that, they had other activities there in the town. There was a shirt factory there. I know there was in Pointville. But some of the other things I didn't know too much about. You know what I mean? The things that went on. But they had a great many activities in Pointville. They had let me see. That at that particular time, I think they were still using it when I took that picture. In little
Still
Virginia.
using the sawmill.
Yes, they were. But of course, then that passed out of existence too, I guess. And Asher Parker probably died, and or moved away. I'm not sure what. But
tell me a little bit about. You said there was trouble at Fort Dix with the black and white troops.
oh, that was in the Second
Warring.
World War.
And that was in World War II.
Yeah, there was a great deal of difficulty. They had the black troops down on the Rifle Range Road. They had them down there, and they had a lot of the men from the South, the white men from the South, and they just didn't get along, and they had to move them. And I happened to come through one night. We were going to the Wrightstown area. I think it was to a church affair, and as we were going down the road, we saw there was some shooting, and there were some tracer bullets went right across our path. I'll never forget that. That was terrible. There was quite a bit of difficulty there. They had to move the quarters and separate them, and then whatever else they did. But there was quite a bit of difficulty. Of course, we were there all during from 1940. See, they took over that big house where my mother had, and we moved down into a small house in Pointville. And then they had gates that you had to come in and out of. It was difficult, And my husband at that time started to work for a construction company out in, let's see, something there. Well, it was one of the middle states where they were building a camp. And later on, he went out there to live, and I could not stay there with my family. So we scoured looking for a place all around the vicinity, trying to find a place that we could move. And we didn't know where to go. And finally, it came the time that he was going to, Indiana it was where he was going. And he was going out there, and we only had 3 days left. So we went all the way up in the Trenton, all the way around the roads, and finally we came back down and over on the South Pemberton Road, and we found a house there for rent. And the lady very kindly, I had 4 children then. No, 5 children then, and she didn't want to take me in. I had a son who was 17, and then the others were all underneath, all in line. She doesn't want to take me in. And she said, all those children at this house, it's not large enough for you. It was the only place. But she was really Mattie Shaw, the Mr. and Mrs. Shaw that lived out there at that time. A lot of people in Pemberton know them. And she was so nice to me, So at last we had a place, and we stayed there for 4 years. And of course, in the meantime, my oldest daughter married, and my other son, the oldest son, that's Kenneth. I think he went to the south, and worked down in the south. So there were just the 3 of us then that were there. And my husband came back, and of course we stayed there. And then she sold that house, and we didn't know where we were going to go then. So we came out here, and we went into Browns Mills area, and we found a house that we could move. And that was up along the, on the old, what do you call that road? They have it. You go all the way across and up the lake.
Lakeshore Drive?
It's called, I have a terrible time with names. I can't think of it. Anyway, we bought this plot of tract of land from, right down the street here. What's his name? I can't think of his name. Isn't that all? I'm in trouble. Hendrickson, Mr. Hendrickson. Mm-hmm. We bought this. We moved the house over here. We got here in 46, and we weren't able to move in until 47 when the house was fairly livable. And then we came here, and we've been living here since 47.
Tell me again about your father in Pointville. He always wanted a farm, and the things he raised are just fantastic.
He was 50 years old. He was 50 years old when we moved there.
To Pointville?
When we moved there in 1916. He was really a fabulous person. He really was. He was really a fine musician. He had never had much training in anything. Or not too many lessons, very small amount. He could play a cornet, he could play a violin, he could play a banjo. He had made a banjo. He had made his violin.
Goodness.
He had, in fact, Kenneth owns a violin that he made. He has it over there at his house. He loved music. He was German, born in Bavaria.
And he was not related to any of the Yerkes in Pemberton?
Yes, he was a second cousin to Louis.
Oh.
No, I can't tell you any more than that.
And Louis is Charles Yerkes' father.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
right. And but
was that one reason you came out to this area?
We came out here because of Kinsley's, because Mrs. Kinsley was my father's sister.
Oh.
And he was looking for a place. He was looking really up in Pennsylvania for a farm. But they found this place in Pointville before we could find one up in Pennsylvania. So, in other words, we must have been meant to come to New Jersey, So he had this 12 acres of farmland. And he started out, he did a fabulous job. He had started out with just a vegetable garden that first year. And they came and they plowed, and they had, we bought 12 hens and a rooster from Kinsley's, and started out with that for a flock of, to raise a flock of chickens. Then, of course, we bought various kinds. We had white dot, we had white rock, we had, what do you call those? I'm not going to remember all the ones that lay eggs real well. The white ones.
Leghorns.
Leghorns. We had some of those. We kept those apart. We had those other white chickens that you and black giants and I can't remember all of them. But little by little we did all that. My mother and I used to take care of the chickens, and we had first of all we had an old horse, and then a horse and carriage. My father taught me how to hitch that the carriage up, and I used to go to Wrightstown and pick up my sister and my brother when they came home weekends. They lived in the city during the weekend, and they worked, and of course my sister taught school there. And I would go to Wrightstown on Friday night, and she would come, and then my brother would come at Friday and Saturday afternoon, and they would stay over until Sunday night, and then I would take them back, or my father would drive them back to Wrightstown, get on the train, and they'd go back to Philadelphia. We did that over and over and over. And then he had just every kind of thing growing out there that it was possible to grow. He had peanuts, and I told you, he raised celery. He had all kinds of greens.
Peanuts were successful?
Yes. And he took them, he did that beautifully, and then he roasted them, and they were good. He raised tobacco, and he dried it, and he even used it. I tell you, he had trees. We had an orchard on both sides of the house that he planted, all kinds of trees, and that's when, in 1940, when they came, and when they cut all those trees down, it almost broke my heart. Those beautiful oak trees and maple trees in the front, all those.
You mean?
Oh, when they took those all down and when they cut them off, that was sickening, All those beautiful fruit trees. We had apples, and in between peaches, plums, pears. We had suckle pears and duchess, and I can't remember all the kinds. All kinds of grapes, all kinds of berries. We had a berry garden. He had just about every kind of thing that you could think of. Every kind of thing. And grew potatoes, sweet potatoes. We had a strawberry bed. We had raspberries. We had an asparagus patch. And then later on, of course, we sold it. We sold some out not exactly out front. We didn't have a little place. We just had a vegetable sign, and people would drive in the driveway. And of course, my father was a very generous man, and he used to give a lot of it away to people that didn't have. He shared a lot. But he really, for 20 years, he had a really, what I'd say, a wonderful life there. It wasn't until he was at least 73 that he wasn't able really to take care of all the things. And the trees didn't get sprayed, and a lot of things, just sort of didn't work too well. Of course, there's always an end to things, I suppose. But it was really beautiful. So.
Anything else you remember about Pointville that was outstanding?
Well, I don't. The church affairs and the I don't know, the suppers and the various things that they had, the meetings, the old-fashioned revival meetings. People used to walk there. I know my husband told me that when he excuse me, he wasn't born right in the town. He was born out, I think it was 2 or 3 miles out on a farm.
Your husband, Charles Parker.
Parker, yeah. And he said they used to his mother would get them all together, and they would walk. They would walk to the church for the meetings, just like the children did. They walked to school. Some of them had to walk a couple of miles, but that wasn't anything, There were no buses in those days. And I think that, I don't know, I suppose it's necessary to do some of the things that they have to do now, but it seems to me that, of course, I won't say that things were better, but let's say they were quieter. People had more peace of mind. I think so, from what I could see.
Not so many ulcers. Heart attacks.
You didn't hear of things like that. There were people who got sick, of course, but in those days we had a doctor who came from New Egypt on a horse and carriage, and if you wanted him to stop at your house, you tied a white handkerchief to your mailbox.
Oh, for goodness sake!
That was the most marvelous thing. If I could think of his name, he would drive by. Well, he'd have a call probably to someone. He was a marvelous man. He came from New Egypt.
You know his name?
And I can't, if I could think of it now, I would. I hope I can before
you
go. But it was really a marvelous thing. We had him until he died, and then we had Dr. Bickler. He was also from New Egypt, and he was the doctor when my sister was so ill. And then later on, of course, we had Dr. Newcomb, and then later on we had Dr. Bray from Pemberton, and of course he would come, of course. But when we first moved there, it was really really something, because in Philadelphia we lived right down the street from the drugstore and from the doctor, and to come out into a place like this, a place like that it was just so different, with oil lamps, and we had one of those oil lamps in the kitchen that you could pump up, that you could make a brighter light at that time. But the other rooms we had to have stoves. There was no heating, central heating system. But it was delightful. We loved it. So the changes, I really can't think of anything else that was outstanding. We used to go to a bog just the other side of Pointville. There was it was called Warren's. No, that was Warren's Pond. That was the other way toward Wrightstown. But this, I can't think of the name of the man that owned it. But anyway, we used it to go skating in the wintertime, and they also used it to cut the ice to put in the ice houses, because they did all that sort of thing.
Was that on the road down toward Barrens Mills?
It's still there.
Yes, there still is.
It's still that little pond is still there. It has a lot of springs under it. It's really. I remember we used to go skating. My husband and I, before we were married, we went down there, and all the kids, they'd build a big bonfire. You could do all those things in those days, and it was really a beautiful place. I know.
Where was the ice house? Were they?
The different farmers had those.
Oh.
Mr. Atkinson,
I
John
thought maybe
Henry
they had
Atkinson.
one central one or something.
No, the different farmers. There were so many farms there. See, it tells you later that 30 farms from the area were bought by the government. And when you think of all of those people from all of those farms that used to come down to church, the church would be full on Sunday. The bell would ring. They had a beautiful bell in the what do you call that?
Belfry?
I guess you called it belfry, wouldn't you? Anyway, they had the place. The people would come, the horses and wagons, and the carriages. And some people had cars, but not too many. That was in 1916. And when you think of all those people that moved from there, it just left it like it was just like a desert. You can't believe it, And what else were you going to?
Do you remember what most of the farmers used to raise? Were they mostly dairy farmers? Or
Well, a lot of them were. As far as I can, they always had rye fields and wheat and corn. I think most of them had cows. I guess I wasn't too observant on some of that, you know what I mean? Of course, the farm that I was near, and then Ira Danley, they had a farm out the other way from Pointville. They had cows, I remember. And that's about the amount of it, I think. They were mostly dairy farmers.
not so much produce then?
No, only what you would need for yourself.
Right.
And I don't think most of the people canned. They did their canning. There wasn't any freezing at that time. You did that. That's what I did. I know all the fruit that we had on that place I used to can and make jelly and jam. I'd have anywhere from 200 or 300 jars and various things like that,
Do you remember Juliustown at all?
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember?
You see, when we moved there, or when we lived there during that area, finally there was the three churches were joined together on a circuit. There was Pointville, Wrightstown, and Juliustown, and we used to join together sometimes with suppers, and sometimes with not so much that as we would for fellowship, I think, But we'd have the same pastor. He would service the three churches, and lots of times the young people, I think, would get together sometime on some of those things, But not. I really don't know too much about it because we moving away at that time, and I lived there such a brief period before they took all the farms.
Right.
But as much as I can think, unless you can think of something else.
You say you know a little bit about Hanover Furnace. Tell me
Very, just a
what that
very
is.
little. When it was back in 19, let me see now, my sister, 25, I'd say in about 23 and 24. My husband we used to go for rides in the Browns Mills area, and I used to love to get he used to take me where that used to be, where the Hanover Furnace used to be. And in that area, after we got up in there, I could see where the houses had been.
Now, was this off Range Road or what?
Yes, I really don't
here.
know just how he went but see, he was a gunner. He used to
Travel
go.
Town Road.
He would go out through Browns Mills some way. I really don't know how he went those days, but he knew the woods real well. He used to go gunning, and he lived in the area most of his life, a good bit of it. And he would take me for a ride up in there. I loved that place. It was so reminiscent of olden times. You could see the ashes where they had the furnace. There were these great big heaps and piles of ashes. There was no sign of any buildings there. But the trees in the people's yards, they had various kinds of pine trees that were not in the area. Beautiful, beautiful pine trees, and they had grown up. And that you could tell where the front yards had been, where the houses had been. We used to poke around, look around. And of course that lake. It was a beautiful lake. I loved to go up there and just to sit. And it was quiet and lovely. And I knew very little about it as a revolutionary thing, they had during that day. Making the cannon balls, I had no idea of that iron in the pines and all that sort of thing. I didn't know that until much later. But I know that and the last time that we went up there, that was before they closed it off, and Fort Dix wouldn't allow you to go up there anymore. We had taken my sister for a ride, and she was quite ill. That was in 1924. She had come home in December. No, it was earlier. This was in the fall, and the trees were so beautiful. And we took a ride all up and through that again. We saw it. And that was the last time I remember ever going there. But it really was. It was beautiful to see. My husband would say, "Well, now this is where this person lived," and he would know. He knew some of it. He knew, some of it. But of course, he knew a whole lot more people in the area than I did. I don't remember. But it really was. The lake is still beautiful. I don't know. Of course, it's all in the reservation now. You just can't. I don't think you can go up there. Can you? Can you go up in there now?
I really don't know.
I really don't know.
I think
either.
maybe just on the edge of it or something.
Yeah, I don't think
from
you're
what
allowed
I've
to.
heard.
But I knew.
Now, you were telling me about going to school.
At that time, in order to go to high school, there was no buses, so we used to ride with a mailman, and he just had a small car of his own, and he would stop by for us, pick us up, and he'd take us over to Wrightstown, and then we'd wait for the old Union transportation, the old UT.
This would be about 1920?
That was, yes.
About there?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
in 1920 and 21. And of course, then I didn't go anymore to Pemberton. I went to Mount Holly. My mother bought a car, and I was 16, and I was taught to drive, and so I used to go back and forth to Mount Holly and went to Mount Holly High School.
Mm-hmm.
But the first year, that's how we went, and we got on the old Union transportation. That was really something. That train.
Why?
With this great big high stack. Didn't you ever see the old UT?
Well, I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, well, that it looked just like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it went from Cream Ridge to Pemberton, and then there was the old line that went across. You changed at Lewistown, and what was the name of that? You'd get on that train, and you could connect and go to Trenton. But it tells it in his book. It tells about that.
Was there a school at Lewistown?
As far as I can remember, I don't think so.
There was
they
a
did
station there, wasn't there?
Yes, they had a station. There were a few houses. Yes, there was too. There was a school there. There was a small school there, but I don't remember too much about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a tiny little place that I remember. When I used to leave home in the morning, when I went to Mount Holly School, I used to get my gas right there at that pump that was there at Lewistown. He was a nice old man. I liked him, so I'd stop there and get gas. But back when we used to go on the train, that was really something. Great big gang of kids would get on all the way from Cream Ridge all the way down. To be all the kids getting on the train all the way down. Mm-hmm. That train would be just full of kids, lively, carrying on. Peanuts. Sometimes you get off, the conductor would have to sweep up peanut shells, candy papers all over the kids. They carry on. You know how they were. They're still, you know.
Not much different than the way they are now.
Not a whole lot. Only I think they were a little more subdued, probably. Mm-hmm. They didn't, I don't know, they didn't have an awful language and a lot of stuff. It was more on the, you know, teasing and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I got to know some girls in Juliustown that I liked real well. I had a friend from New Egypt that I liked. It was nice.
Then
Applegate, her name was.
Would you come into the North Pemberton station then?
Let me see. Where did we get off? Yes, we did.
And then walk to the high school from there.
Walked over to the high school. Mm-hmm. That's right. It seems such a long time ago. It's such a long time ago, you know. But to get it there, there's the wait there at Wrightstown. Yes, right. To get on the train there at Wrightstown and to get off and then to walk up to school. It is such a long time ago. Pemberton was different. Everything was different, you know. Well, as you try to remember a lot of the things, I hope I remembered most of it.
Oh, I think you've been very helpful.
Well, I've enjoyed it, really. It's nice to go back over the things sometimes,
yes.
You know. It's nice to...
And we thank you very much.
But
we're talking about the hotel at Pointville, and Mrs. Parker said she remembers the name now as Harker's Hotel.
It was called Harker's when we moved there. And
they used to have dances there?
They did. They had, and the people would come there to stay, you know. That's where they had their parties. Mm-hmm. Of course, they sold, you know, alcohol, spirits, what do you call it? Whiskey, wine, beer, something. They sold that there, but that was the only place. You know, it's like it is now. Mm-hmm. But I can't think of the, no, I'll tell you. Bessie Atkinson would know of Miss Harker. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know whether she's still living or not, but she liked my sister very much. And when my sister was quite ill, that was in 25. It was in 24. She used to come and see her. She lived right in Pointville at that time. She had the post office, I think, for a while. Because you see the big store.
There was a post office in Pointville.
Yeah. That was part of that store.
Oh, part of the general store?
Yeah. Then later, they took it out of there, and they had it across the street at this Miss Harker's house. She had the post office there for a while. And then, of course, it was, you know, discontinued. We had to go to Pemberton. But when we first moved there, they had it there. But we didn't get our mail there. We got our mail in the mailbox outside, and the mailman would put it in, coming back and forth from Wrightstown.
And you remembered the name of the doctor, too, who used to come from
Dr. Allen from New Egypt.
Dr. Allen.
He was really a fabulous man. He took care of all the sick people, all in the whole, I'd say, of that area. I don't know how large it was. All the way, I suppose, to from New Egypt on down. Anybody that needed a doctor. With his horse and carriage. He was a good doctor. I would say he was a good doctor. I really would. My husband became quite ill, and thought he was going to have, in fact, he had appendicitis. And I said, well, he should go to the hospital. He said, oh, no, he's not going to go to the hospital. And I nursed him through that. He had to say, I didn't know much about nursing those days. And but we put ice on it, and he brought him through. It bothered him some years afterward. It bothered him some, but he never had to have it out. Because he always said those glands are in there for a purpose, and they have no right to be moved.
The doctor said.
Yeah, that like the adenoids and tonsils and the appendix and all those things. He said.
Nowadays they're beginning to come around to that way of thinking.
They know that they are there for a purpose. That's right. I've read a good many things on that. Of course, I had some training, and I became a practical nurse. That's what I am now. Looking for a job. I think I'd like to work again, but I don't know if I'm going to be. You know, I'd like to. I don't have my license yet. But I don't know. It's hard to get started, you know. Besides, it's nice to speak home.
Yes, well, I've taken a lot of
time. Well, I'm
time.
delighted that you came.